Andy Schmuckler, call myself a man on a mission. Um, the mission's got to do with a certain way of understanding the human world that I think uh, should be adopted because it's clearly substantially valid and has important ramifications, so I maintain. There's a passage in Freud's writings where he goes through some of the big ideas that change our understanding of the world. Um, he represents himself as being the third big idea. And the first one is Copernicus, the second one is Darwin, and then there's each one, there's a humbling of humanity. With Copernicus, the Earth is no longer the center of the universe. All these belief systems in our civilization that placed us at the center of the universe and everything else revolving around it. It's a big change when the Earth no longer has this special piece of real estate. What does it mean that we're just floating out here in a solar system? The second one is Darwin. And that was, I mean, we even in our times, we're still wrestling with the way the change that brings about, because a lot of people see it as contradicting the scripture that they regard as the inerrant word of God. So if you let anything be a mistake because Darwin's right rather than a special creation or something like that, as soon as you open up a hole, the whole dam is going to break. So it's resisted. It does, but the part of the society that doesn't resist it, I think the evolutionary thinking does change a whole lot about how ordinary, semi-educated people understand their world. And then Freud, as I recall it, I wrote about it, but it's been a long time since I read exactly what Freud did. Anyway, Freud places himself third. It was the humbling of, we're not the center of the universe, we're not separate from all the other animals, we're another animal. And the Bible doesn't replace science. But Freud, I think, did actually make a huge or significant contribution to our understanding. His problem is that his big insight about the power of the unconscious got tied up with a whole lot of other stuff, and I'm afraid our civilization has largely lost what Freud did have to contribute. But be that as it may, the reason I'm telling you this is that in my life, whenever I've been presenting the big idea or the big organized set of ideas that has been my life's work, I've always got a lot of chutzpah, so that I spent 14 years from the time I thought I saw something really, really important to the time it came out in this book from the University of California Press. And I was on fire much of that time because I really do think that this is an idea that holds water, and that if you adopt it, it does change one's understanding of the world. Uh, I've been excavating a lot of understandings that are implied by what I saw in 1970 and got published in 1984. Um, Made something of a splash, but the idea never got dealt with. So you can put an idea out there that might be like Copernicus. I mean, it's interesting. The story of people getting it out there. I'm such an eager beaver. I've been, that's been my full time. Well, I don't know, but Darwin was very shy about publishing his results until I don't know exactly. I think it's got to do with having every T crossed and every I dotted and ending up with his I's crossed. But in any event, he published only under duress because there was another guy named Wallace that was out there uh, in New Guinea or something down in the Southeast Asia area. Um, and he was coming to some of the same ideas. And he sent something, I think, to Darwin, not knowing that, but what he was doing was, saying stiff stuff that Darwin had been working on for 20 years, but afraid to go to press with. Anyway, that got him moving. As for Copernicus, well, he lived at a different time where saying something, I believe the issue is that if you say that the earth goes around the sun, not vice versa, you are running afoul of the Catholic Church. I think that, the Catholic Church wasn't just about the Gospels, it was also the philosopher was Aristotle. And I'm not sure what all it is, but I don't. But with Copernicus, there was a big risk so he didn't have anything published. I don't think nothing got published until well after his death, I believe. Anyway, there's a story about the Copernicus is putting out into the world. I think posthumously, because he didn't want to be around to get into trouble. But me, I actually do think that I've got something that should change people's way of understanding the world. I've been working with it for a long time. It got out there with a full page review in the New York Times and featured in Esquire magazine and a few other, getting an academic prize. And you'd think, okay, well, you guys, here's a thesis that's being put out there really boldly. I mean, the guy's got chutzpah. I'm about to read you something about, why I'm talking about this. And I've always felt like I got to do everything I can to get people to notice that there's a game changer here. So at the very beginning of the book that I've got in my lap now, starts out with, for Western man, the progress of understanding has been a humbling experience. And that's what I was going through. Copernicus takes out us, makes us this little dot in the universe. Well, he didn't know how tiny a dot we are, but we were at least not, we at least we're part of, we're a planet that goes around the sun. That was demotion. We've got common ancestors because we emerged out of the world of mammals, and we are just another mammal in some basic evolutionary way. That's humbling. I don't find it so humbling. I think it's really cool the way evolution unfolds. But people have been entertaining ideas about special creation, and people say, well, if you say animals, we're not animals, we're people. Well, both actually. So that's humbling. And then Freud, I think, felt that he was humbling by showing that we were not masters in our own minds, that we were pushed around by unconscious forces, don't know what we're doing. And then I conclude this little opening section of the book. One fortress of our pride has remained. Whatever man's shortcomings as a creature, there can be no doubting man's powers as a creator. In the globe-spanning structures of civilization, behold man's works. But now comes the parable of the tribes. That's what I was calling the idea that remains an important part of my Better Human Story. A theory to illuminate the nature and determinants of civilization. It shows that even in those structures where man's power and ability are most tangibly embodied, even in the evolution of civilization, man is as much the victim as the master. So the chutzpah is I put myself in that progression. The fact is, I actually do believe that if we understood the implications of our species taking the unprecedented step of extricating itself from the niche in which it evolved biologically by inventing its own way of life, which is what I define civilization as being, that we unleash certain forces that came with an unprecedented situation that's created when a species done something that had never been done before, leaving the natural order, creating a new life form. Anyway, I think it holds water. I'm out here because, I do think it would make changes to some important ways we understand our world. Not exactly parallel to going from we're the center of the universe with the Ptolemaic things revolving around us, dragging the stars, or what's his name, Apollo and his chariot. Or we're not the center of things. Whatever we are, we're something that happened on this planet in a solar system that's in a part of a galaxy surrounded with a solar system with a particular kind of star that's going to eventually die at this. Just a really strange way of looking at the world. All of a sudden, when you open things up, and of course, what Copernicus did was sort of a crucial first step in a larger transformation of our understanding of our world. Back in the 1920s, the astronomer Hubble, I can't remember where he took. Anyway, everybody assumed that the Milky Way was the only galaxy. It was still way huge, but it was presumed to be the only galaxy. Pretty soon, people could see further. It turns out, as what's his name, Carl Sagan used to say on Cosmos, billions and billions. I mean, it just boggles the mind that the universe is so big that they're looking at light that didn't get moving at 186,000 miles a second until almost 13.8 billion years. Imagine the distance light would travel in 13.8 billion years, and yet that's what it means to look at the furthest away things in the universe. And who knows where they are now? I mean, it's just sort of mind-boggling when you get to actually think about, wow, this is what we are. And similarly, with evolution, Darwin laid down some really important ideas in a really elegant way. But in terms of the overall evolutionary perspective, there's been a lot of work that hadn't been done. And now some of it's been done. And I want to say that my Better Human Story operates in that Darwinian world, that I'm looking at a few things that the evolutionary perspective shows that really illuminate some important things about the human world. Through that, I can show how a destructive force arises. Through that, I can show that there is a moral and a spiritual dimension that is real, important, and life-serving. Evolution put certain things in us, and we can make inferences from that. Evolution creates a certain kind of order, and if we depart that order, there are repercussions that have to do with the dynamics of the system. So I don't see any sign that I'm going to be on anybody's future list of big ideas that changed how our civilization understood things. But that's when I'm on a mission, that is the mission, because I actually do believe that if we see things through this integrated vision of the human story, it will enhance the chances that we will be able to survive on this planet as human civilization for the long haul, versus the alternative scenario, which is quite visible in our times, that we could destroy ourselves. So I'm applying for position on that list, and I realize how much chutzpah there is in that. And I read you this thing from that book just to show I've had that chutzpah since, well, whenever I drafted that first chapter, 1982, I guess. It was published in 1984, and there it is. You know, I don't like to make big claims. I don't like having chutzpah. I'm an American boy, is supposed to be modest, but I actually think this could help, and I think I know what I'm talking about. So what am I going to do? I'm going to toot the horn as loud as I can and say, if enough people were looking at the world that way, our collective consciousness would be altered in some beneficial way that makes it more likely that human civilization will survive. And in these times, it also makes it more likely that American democracy will survive. So I'm a man on a mission, and it takes a lot of chutzpah, and I don't like having to have chutzpah.